Today we're on to welcome Dr. Kate Davis to the show today. I'm very excited to have her on. She's a functional medicine doctor who really specializes in gut health, everything gut health related. And this is potentially the seed of all chronic disease, right? It's such an important topic to talk about. And the gut is really, in many ways, foundation of health. Like without it, and there's so many different things that could be playing into gut health and environmental toxins and environmental factors. If we're not really aware of these things and how we can actually heal our gut, we can set ourselves up for a lot of chronic disease, or we can potentially optimize our overall wellness based off our daily decisions. So very happy to have her on, share her knowledge and expertise with us. So how are you doing today, Dr. Davis?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me on here, Anthony.
Absolutely. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into functional medicine and gut health and how you're being of service today.
Yeah, well, I got into functional medicine just because of my own journey, with chronic constipation and bloating issues. And I actually went 13 days without a single bowel movement. And I was on Miralax for 11 of those days and nothing was helping. It was pretty awful. And, medical doctors, they offered me two terrible options, because I did what everyone does. You go to the GI doc and all they offered me was, hey, you can take this drug that has a very common side effect of permanent facial twitches, or we can remove your intestines. And I was like, well, I'm single and 24, so definitely not doing either of those. And, luckily I was able to, find a doctor who actually, helped me at that time. He did some myofascial release in my abdomen, and I swear I lost like 10 pounds that night. Like it was the first time I'd been able to go to the bathroom in almost 2 weeks. And all he did was just, if you've ever had myofascial release done, it was just very light, work in the abdomen. Awesome. It doesn't feel like anything. And, but after that, I just overhauled my diet and went like gluten-free, paleo, dairy-free. And as long as I stuck to that, I was fine, but every time I strayed from my diet, I would get those symptoms, coming back. So it never really fixed the problem. It just kind of held them at bay. And then, for about a decade, I kind of dealt with that, which was tough when you're in your 20s and you can't eat bread or dairy. And so going out to eat is tough and, all that stuff. And that's why I'm so passionate about, helping people with gut issues. Because I remember being, young and healthy and wondering why I was the only one dealing with this and all my friends were fine. And, I was really healthy. I was a former D1 athlete. I didn't look unhealthy at all. And so it was just very confusing in that time of my life. And, about 10 years later, all the issues started getting much, much worse after a really stressful life event that happened. And, they were worse than they were before. I got the bloating, the constipation, the acid reflux, all that came back. And I was even on the verge of probably an autoimmune disease because my joints were swelling up for no reason. And I was really fatigued and it was just a mess. And luckily my friend was in town. She's a functional medicine doctor. And she said, hey, let's do some testing because this is not normal. Like, I don't know what's going on, but we got to figure out what this is. And she actually found a massive parasite infection and, started me on a detox plan. And, after I passed a 3-foot-long parasite, all of my symptoms started to go away. And 4 months into the detox, I felt 100% better. Like every single issue went away. I felt healthier, more energetic, like myself again for the first time in, almost a decade. And, since then, I've been able to help, hundreds of women heal from chronic gut issues.
Wow. It's an incredible story. I mean, first, it sounds like you did a lot of healing. And I feel like a lot of people who go through that process, they start to become really passionate about this, right? Like, how can I actually be of service with this? Because you actually have an experience with it now. It's like you actually know how to feel well. And it seems like that's kind of got you started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough being in that place when you're so young. And so I remember being there and how scary it was and how uncomfortable you feel. Like I didn't even want to hang out with people because I was so uncomfortable. Like couldn't even sit up straight in class because I was so bloated, so uncomfortable. Like I could only eat small amounts of food and it was not a fun place to be. So that's why I love, helping people with those issues.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like so difficult to go through that. And then like, as you mentioned, life events can make things worse, right? Like stressful events, all these things. We don't realize how everything is connected. So it seems like, oh, they sent you down another path. It's like kind of got you where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of crazy because we have, what's that saying? It's like, we make plans and God laughs and just redirects us on a different path. So
yeah, 100%. So the gut is a huge topic, right? How would you define gut health and start to kind of understand that in our own lives and maybe some basic processes afterwards?
Yeah, so you mean like what makes a healthy gut or?
Yeah, it's like first, like how would you define that and kind of like see how people can start to think about that in their own lives?
Yeah, I mean, just having good gut health is just being able to properly digest and absorb the food that you put in your body. And so, being able to do that without acid reflux or bloating or, constipation or loose stool, you should have, 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. You should be able to digest your food and not feel terrible after you eat. You shouldn't develop food sensitivities in adulthood that you didn't have as a kid. That's not normal. That's usually an indication that your immune system is really struggling and starting to, attack food that you're eating that it never did before. And so those are like little warning signs that I always tell people don't ever ignore, bloating, constipation, loose stool that's pretty consistent, nausea, acid reflux, food sensitivities that are popping up. Like those are pretty big warning signs that you don't want to ignore because like you said in the beginning of the episode, the gut is connected to pretty much everything. That's where, mental health and hormones and, a lot of different issues in the body can start in the gut. And so really just, focusing on keeping that healthy for as long as possible is really going to affect your overall health.
Definitely. I feel like a lot of people, we just normalize things that should not be normalized, right? We just have these symptoms all the time. It's like whether it's bloating, indigestion, all these things we just think are normal, but they're anything but. Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely correct. Like you should not, if your doctor tells you, oh, it's just part of getting older and you're 30, you're not old. Like you shouldn't be having these issues until you're like 70 or 80. Like if any doctor says, oh, it's just part of aging and you're in your 40s and 50s, that's not normal. So, yeah.
So if people are experiencing gut symptoms, like what would they be looking for? And also what these things could be a potential cause, and perhaps like what can we look toward down the line if we don't take care of these things?
Yeah, well, again, like all the stuff I mentioned before, if you're not going to the bathroom at least twice a day, you're technically constipated. Unless you're on a, carnivore diet, that one's a little different because you don't really have a lot of fiber in the diet and you're absorbing most of the nutrients. But you should be going to the bathroom like twice a day. You should be emptying your bowels. That's like the number one way that toxins get out of your body is through your bowel movements. So we got to make sure that that keeps flowing. Otherwise, you could just get a buildup of toxic waste in the body. So that would be, all those symptoms I described earlier would definitely be like the starting point. And then, yeah, in terms of, what they can affect if they start going wrong, I mean, there's so many different issues, right? Like the happy chemicals that make us joyful and happy all the time, like dopamine and serotonin, they're produced by the gut bacteria, mostly stored in the gut. So your mental health can get affected. A lot of hormones are regulated in the gut. You've got a group of bacteria in there called the estrobolome that actually regulates estrogen and testosterone and progesterone in your body. And, also, when that gut lining breaks down, now you can develop autoimmune disease. And that's a huge thing that's rampant in America is, a rise in autoimmunity, across the board. And so you've got to look at the gut first, because if you have what's called leaky gut, where that gut lining breaks down and you're no longer, absorbing nutrients, and now you have toxins slipping back into your bloodstream and creating a lot of issues and putting more stress on your liver and your immune system, now you all of a sudden develop food sensitivities and autoimmunity, and that could manifest in all sorts of different ways, like Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis, really kind of depending on the person. But yeah, I mean, it's connected to every system in your body. Brain fog a lot of the times is gut issues because that gut brain connection. So there's so many different things that are connected to the gut. So it's super important to just really, start to focus there first.
Yeah, 100%. So you talk a lot about gut cleanses and how like they could potentially be misleading, right? There's a lot out there. We just kind of look at these things in general. It's like, oh, let's try this, right? What looks good? But is there anything that is wrong with that in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of the things you see on social media, it's so popular now to do a gut cleanse or a parasite cleanse and, because it's a trending thing, but you don't ever want to just jump on a generic protocol, because if you're not assessing, you're guessing. If you do a parasite cleanse, but you actually have mold toxicity or heavy metals or really severe liver dysfunction, you're not going to feel better. If anything, you'll feel worse because now you're releasing a bunch of toxins into an already broken system. And so it's really just important to understand, not only what is actually going on in your body so you know what to target, but also can your body even handle it? Because a lot of people, they have such severe gut dysfunction and gallbladder issues and liver issues that they can't even handle a detox. Because if you just start pulling toxins out of the body that have been stored there for decades, and there's no way for them to get out because you're constipated or you have leaky gut or your liver's like really sluggish and not able to process everything efficiently, then you're going to get really sick. And I've even heard so many, lots of people say, oh, hey, I've, ended up with migraines or worse, more severe stomach pain, or even ended up in the ER from trying a detox without really knowing what they were doing. So really, really important to like get a full picture of your entire health before trying any of those things.
That's a great point. We tend to do detoxes and things like that. We're not in a good state of health to do it in the first place. Like, or there's a lot of things that can go into that, right? Maybe we're dealing with a chronic condition and we're not really understanding how these things can affect other things in our body. So it's good to have that understanding.
Yeah, definitely.
If people like were to do that in the right way, is there something they should look for, or should they see a practitioner? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Like, yes, you potentially you could do one yourself, but you'd have to be someone who's really, really healthy, like to just blindly go on a detox. But I always recommend working with a practitioner. I mean, it's always going to be your best bet. It's not just getting the testing done and like knowing what's going on in your body. It's using someone who can look at all of your labs and all of that information and all of your symptoms and your whole health history and put together a plan that's very individualized for you based on their years or decades of knowledge. And so it's really just like paying someone to shortcut the process for you, because if I had tried to do that on my own, fixing my gut back then, I would have had no idea where to start. And so, I was really blessed that one of my good friends was a functional medicine doctor, and she kind of got me on the right path. And she ended up like training me after that because I got such phenomenal results. I wanted to get into it. And so she was the one who ended up training me for a year and helping me with like, with the patients that I was working with at the time. So yeah, I mean, it's just so important because, someone like myself or other functional medicine doctors or a naturopath or even an integrative medical doctor, they can really just look at the full picture, blood work to see how your organs are functioning and your metabolic health and your inflammatory markers, and just see like, okay, is there a ton of inflammation in the body? Can you even handle a detox right now? Are you incredibly stressed to where maybe we need to down regulate your nervous system first, calm the brain and get it out of that fight or flight and into that rest and digest system so you can actually handle a detox, which for a lot of people, that's where I start them, is just, hey, for the first 2 to 4 weeks, we're just going to be calming your brain down so that your body doesn't freak out when we actually start going after stuff. And then people do really well because they're people who've, tried other things. They're like, oh, I react to a lot of supplements, even multivitamins. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just start small and just slowly build on that and, get you to a place where your body can actually handle it. But yeah, I mean, working with a practitioner who's going to order the right tests. Unfortunately, medical doctors, they're not going to order this stuff, you guys. I know it's frustrating, but unless you find an integrative medical doctor, they're not going to be ordering tests for mold toxicity or heavy metals or any of that. So you really got to see someone who's more holistic and functional minded. And then from there, they can put together, a really individualized care plan, but not just for detoxing. It's also, okay, well, what lifestyle changes do we have to clean up? Do we have to clean up the food quality or the products that you're using for self-care, or, calming down your brain and getting you out of that fight or flight state so your body can actually heal. There's so many different factors to consider, and, even working on metabolic health. Can we get your metabolism under control? Can we get insulin resistance under control so that your body's not inflamed all the time? And so there's so many different factors to look at, but that's why it's so helpful to work with someone who can really look at the full picture and get you on a really good path to healing.
100%. Yeah. As you mentioned, health is such a personalized journey, right? Mm-hmm. We tend to do these cookie cutter things, but they usually don't work because there's so many different things we need to take control of, right? Like we have to self-assess, like where are we? What are our goals? All these things, like your state of health, everything works in synergy. So that's why it's good to work with someone, right? And just have like all the testing and all that, and just like personalize your own process. Of course, there are foundational principles that work for everyone, but at the same time, it's like, what is right for you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So when it comes to gut health, like, are there any misconceptions that you think that most people are perhaps taking action on, right? Maybe they look at all these things out there. Is there anything that you see over and over again that kind of sticks out to you?
In terms of like what they're doing wrong, or what
just like if they're wanting to take control of their gut health in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we've already touched on it, but like the biggest thing is just, probably blindly jumping on any sort of protocol without really knowing what's going on in your body. That's probably the number one mistake. But another thing too is just trying to find the magical supplement that's going to just heal all of your issues. Because I know there are people who, buy colostrum or a probiotic or, what else do people use to try to heal their gut? L-glutamine and all that stuff. And they just have a miraculous recovery, but that's not most people. And so a lot of times you'll see people on Instagram saying, oh, this product saved my life. Here's my discount code to go buy it. And it's like, yeah, it might help some people, but it's not really going to get rid of the problem, because if you're just throwing a bunch of gut healing products into a gut that is very dysfunctional and that's constantly inflamed and constantly being damaged by chronic infections, it's not going to fix the problem. It's just putting a band-aid on an open wound. And so, stop trying to find the miracle supplement. It's probably not there. Work with someone who can really just, get you on a true path to healing and remove those stressors that are causing the inflammation in the first place. Because my number one goal is, okay, well, what's the root cause? Why is your gut inflamed? Why is your liver not functioning well? Why do you have brain fog? What is the actual trigger that's creating those issues? Let's remove it. And then let's also clean up your lifestyle in the process, because that's what's going to give you long-term results, over
100%.
time.
You mentioned parasites, right? And is this something that is really prevalent? Like, what should we do to start to see, I guess, some awareness on this, like what we're dealing with, and perhaps how to handle it if we are?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people I work with have parasites, but I also work with gut issues, so they're a lot more common with gut issues. I think the biggest misconception and what they taught, they teach us in medical school, and if you're pre-med and undergrad, they tell you, oh, parasites don't exist unless you go to a third world country or Southeast Asia, Africa, South America. Otherwise, you're probably never going to see it, so there's no point in testing for it. And I've talked to so many MDs who tell me, yeah, that's what they told us in medical school. I didn't realize how prevalent it was. In the US. And I've even worked with people who have never left the United States and they still had parasites come out during their detox. So it's not like the parasites just stop at the border and say, oh, I guess we can't go into America. Let's turn around. They are here. And granted, it's not as common, but I think because of the bombardment of horrible quality food and chemicals in our environment and toxic self-care products, we've gotten our bodies to a state where the immune system isn't functioning properly. We're extremely inflamed. We don't prioritize sleep or our well-being. Everyone's stressed out, high stress all the time in America, to where now parasites can actually infect our body and start replicating, because we've, with our terrible lifestyle choices and the food quality and the chemicals that are being sprayed on everything nowadays, our bodies are a lot more susceptible to these infections like parasites and mold and, fungal overgrowth in the gut. And those are becoming a lot more common. And I think it's just because of all these things that damage our gut. I think the number one is food. If you're eating garbage food for decades, it's eventually going to create something bad in your body. And about 80% of your immune system lives in the gut. So if you destroy your gut with bad food choices and, stress and not prioritizing sleep, then eventually something's going to break down and something's going to happen. And so I don't think that you should be afraid of eating fish or, walking around barefoot outside like, oh, I'm going to pick up a parasite. I always tell people, after you detox and your body's functioning again, and your organs work better and your immune system's back online, you shouldn't be afraid of getting parasites again, because now your stomach acid is being produced properly. So you should be able to, kill off any parasites in your food that you're ingesting. Your gallbladder and your liver are producing bile salts and releasing them properly in the intestines to further that, issue of killing off parasites and bacteria and all that stuff that can infect your gut. You shouldn't be worried about it anymore, as long as you maintain those good results with, prioritizing good quality food and rest and, taking care of yourself and, reducing stress in your life. It shouldn't be a problem, but I probably see them in about 75% of my patients. So it's a lot more common in America than people think they are.
100%. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of it comes down to just our immune system, and we're just overstressed with so many different things that are kind of stacked against us in the modern world, right? And that makes us much more susceptible to anything, including parasites.
Yeah. And then you add in the aspect of, social media making people feel more disconnected than they've ever felt in their entire lives. And then there's another component of your health that's down the drain. So we've become, less of a social society, and that's a huge part of health. Like if you look at studies, close social connections are one of the best predictors of, living longer in life.
Yeah. Especially like the microbiome, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you're just exposed to a lot more, but I think it's just the general, we need community, we don't need to be at home by ourselves scrolling on a phone and watching other people, live their lives. I think it's just important to be around other people and, prioritize that a lot more.
Yeah, we don't realize how all these little things, they kind of add up. Like they're little stressful moments, and our thoughts and emotions have a huge impact on overall biology. If we're constantly like this comparison mode or whatever it is, it's like it can definitely have an impact over time. We may not even
Yeah.
realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like heavy metals and parasites, like they probably go hand in hand in a sense. Like perhaps they work in a synergy, but not in a good way, right? They kind of make things
Yeah.
worse together.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. People don't realize that parasites will actually use heavy metals kind of as a shield to hide from your immune system. So a lot of times when I see, someone will bring me their testing they've done and say, oh, I've got heavy metals on my test, but I did parasite testing and it was negative. I'll just look at them and say, you probably have parasites too. Even if it's negative, like they usually go hand in hand. Usually when I see people who just have heavy metals pop up on testing, they still see parasites come out. So they are, kind of a synergistic relationship in your body,
Yeah, for
unfortunately,
sure.
and that's why it's so important not just to jump on a heavy metal detox or a parasite detox, because maybe you have both. And if you just go after one and you don't get rid of the other one, it's just going to allow, that first one to come back.
Yeah.
So really important to understand, is there another co-infection that's decreasing your immune system and allowing the parasites to overgrow, like mold toxicity or candida overgrowth is really common with parasites because they just destroy the gut lining so much, and so much of your good bacteria get wiped out that now this candida that's naturally found in your gut can start overgrowing and in a bad way. And that's when people get that thrush on their tongue. They get a lot of energy issues throughout the day. And so you really got to look at the whole picture. But yeah, heavy metals and parasites, very common to see together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there certain protocols that you have people go through, or is it kind of personalized? Like, what are your thoughts on that overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's always individualized. I always tell people if you lined up 10 people I've worked with who had constipation issues, they all had completely different care plans. Now, there might be some similarities in, how we start the protocol by healing leaky gut, because almost everyone has leaky gut in America. I've only seen maybe 3 people who've come to me who did not have leaky gut, but the other hundreds of people, they all had it. So, like in the beginning, in terms of healing up the gut lining, some of it's a little similar. But again, like I talked about earlier, some people have extremely high stress, and I can't change your work environment or your home environment or any of that, but I can teach you these really simple things to calm down your nervous system. Like from a physiological state, can we just bring you back down to a normal level, even in the midst of all this stress going on in your life? And so that's a really important skill that most people haven't mastered, like
Right.
simple things like journaling and grounding and just prioritizing sleep. I mean, if you want to fix hormones and gut health and energy and bloating, I mean, just go to bed by 10 p.m. every night and just see how much your life changes after 2 weeks. Because most people don't do that. They're like, oh, whatever, sleep's not that important. And if you look at all the processes that happen when you're asleep, it's incredibly important. That's one of the first things I start with people who have insulin resistance, because it really does affect your hormones significantly. So again, and if someone has metabolic issues, I'm like, okay, in the beginning, as we're healing the gut, we're also going to focus on becoming more insulin sensitive. So getting out of that insulin resistance that's going on in your body, and getting your blood sugar back down, and your body able to actually utilize energy in the body. So it really depends on the person. So a lot of the lifestyle stuff is different. Usually I have to focus on sleep for a lot of people because they go to bed at 1 a.m. And they're wondering why they can't lose weight and their hormones are a wreck and their gut hurts all the time. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it might be similar in the beginning, but it all really depends on their health history, their test results. I'm not going to put someone on a parasite cleanse who doesn't have parasites or any signs of parasites. I'm not going to put someone on a mold detox who has a mold pop up on testing. That would just be silly. So, I always go off test results and just come up with a really individualized care plan. And I think that's what really actually heals people. You can't just do a generic protocol and expect to see results in most of the people you work with. I don't think that's a really good way to run a practice, but unfortunately our medical system has kind of gone that way in the last few decades.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of people feel like they've tried everything, right? And there's so many different things that go into that, but just being able to kind of pinpoint the issue and kind of work through these things is such an important thing, right? Because there's always a way, there's always a plan. Like, we just got to be able to kind of find it in a sense. Like that's why working with someone, or just kind of a really specifying what we need instead of doing these general protocols like you mentioned. So
Yeah, it's so important to actually get real healing. That's why, get some testing done. Don't just jump on a generic protocol, because you might feel better, but you're probably going to feel worse if you don't really know what you're doing. So,
right, yeah. So when it comes to like working with someone, is there something that people should look for in terms of that? Uh, functional medicine is excellent for, especially for all the testing and all that.
Yeah, I mean, so most of the people I see, they typically have tried a bunch of different supplements, they've tried diets, and they still don't feel better. And that's where I kind of thrive because I know that the missing root cause for most of those people, because that was me. I tried pretty much every diet in the book, and except for carnivore, never went on that one. It seemed a little too extreme for me. But I tried every diet. I had tried so many different gut healing supplements, and nothing was working. And for me, it was just the root cause was chronic infections and toxins. So most people who come see me, they've already tried that route, and it's not helping. Because yes, there are some people who can completely overhaul their diet and feel 100% better, and that's amazing. And I'm like, great, that's good, but if you're in America, it's so hard to do that because even if you're buying good quality food, not all organic produce is actually organic. Not like there's so many loopholes in our food system that it's actually really hard to heal with foods, and especially with, GMOs and our food not being what it was, 100 years ago, and being less nutrient dense because of the soil depletion and minerals. And there's just so many different factors that make it really difficult to heal with food. So I'd recommend, like, if you're going to call functional medicine doctor, because I've also seen people who've been to several of them before me, and all they did was give them supplements like, hey, you're deficient in all these nutrients, start taking them every month indefinitely. And it's just crazy because if you don't fix the reason why they can't absorb or produce those nutrients, their gut, what's damaging the gut, they're just going to be stuck on this forever. And how is that any better than the medical system? So if you find a doctor, integrative medicine doctor, because there's a lot of MDs who are getting into functional medicine, which is amazing. So try to find one of them, or a functional medicine doctor, or a naturopath. Naturopaths are amazing. Or just someone who can really just look at the full picture and say, and call them and ask, like, do you check for infections and toxins, or do you just do nutrient deficiencies? Because if they're just going to check nutrients and just put you on a ton of supplements, they're probably not going to notice that many results, to be completely honest. So, do your due diligence. Always listen. I always am a big fan of word of mouth. If you hear someone who's like, oh yeah, this doctor's amazing, just go to that doctor. They probably know what they're doing. So that's always, the best kind of referral source is just you heard it from someone else. So, but yeah, that's kind of what you want to look for is not only are they checking, extra labs like better blood work and nutrients, but they're also looking for those underlying chronic infections and toxins that could be wreaking havoc on your organs.
Yeah. A lot of us, we just go for the quick fixes, right? We kind of look for the shiny thing and just go for that. But the reality is, whatever it is, like we're talking about health, wealth, relationships, we have to match the fundamentals. We have to actually match the basics. Like we actually have to focus on nutrition, sleep, exercise, all these things that work together that are actually required of our biology. Then we kind of personalize that approach instead of like just kind of like living our lifestyle, not doing anything different, and going for all that thing looks good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really important to clean up the lifestyle as well. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. And, functional medicine isn't just jumping on supplements or just detoxing or just, getting your blood work done every year and adding extra markers. It's really changing your whole life, like prioritizing sleep, getting outside more, not sitting indoors all day. Like I think the most recent statistic was that everyone in America at least spends like 93% of their time indoor or something crazy. It was over 90% indoors all the time. And so then you wonder why you feel terrible. You're not connected with nature. You're not getting sunshine. Sunshine is so important for vitamin D production, which helps your immune system and helps fight off infections. And, it just makes you feel good. Like I don't know anyone who goes in the sun and is like, oh, I feel terrible right after, unless they got sunburned. But most people are just like, oh my God, I feel like a new person and alive again. And so, relaxed. And so it's just really those simple things of, hey, did you go outside today? Did you go for multiple walks throughout the day, or did you just sit all day at your desk? Because there's so many simple things that people take for granted that can radically transform their health.
Yeah. So the reality is we want to have sustained wellness, right? We don't want to do a protocol and then feel good, then something happens again because we don't have the basics down. We want lifestyle that will actually make us healthy for a lifetime, right? That's the most important thing, actually live optimally. Once you start to do that, make all these changes, realize, hey, so this is actually much better. This is a lot more fun. I actually feel like, vibrant and on purpose and all these things. So it's like such a journey in of itself.
Yeah, and a lot of people think it's going to be complicated, but they don't realize that once they start feeling better, they're more likely to actually do those things. So a lot of my patients a lot of them feel better after the first month just because they're doing all the lifestyle stuff I gave them. And then they're like, wow, I feel like a different person. So then they're more likely to actually do those things daily. And when they don't do them, they notice a difference. They're like, wow, I didn't feel as energetic the last 2 days because I didn't go outside or I didn't go for a walk. And they start to really understand like, oh, this is a lifestyle thing. It's not just a, I'm going to work with Dr. Davis for 6 months kind of thing and then be done with it. You know, that's not how our bodies work. We have to maintain them every single day. And it's those small daily changes that really make the most lasting impression on our health long term.
Yeah, 100%. We want to make things so complex, right? But reality is it's so simple. Like health is very simple if we actually master the basics and get the
Yeah.
fundamentals down. Again, there's no size fits all approach to anyone, but we have to again get these things down, like eat real food, right? Organic, all these things, like high quality sleep, movement, all these things that are required of individuals in order to be well. But then again, like what is your history? What is your state of health? What are your goals? Where do you want to be? And like all these things coming together in such a going back to personalization, something to actually take on and live fully, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just having someone kind of help you along every step of the way. Like, I don't expect people to change their whole life overnight. I start with really small goals. And if you look at habit change research, there's a really good book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. But he talks about how if you want to make long lasting change that actually sticks, you start with an extremely small goal that seems laughable and you just slowly build on it. And so a lot of people think, oh, it's going to be so complicated. If I go to a functional medicine doctor, they're going to have me change everything overnight. And that's just not true. You know, we're going to start small. And as you start feeling better, we're going to keep adding on to it until eventually that's just your new normal. That's your new lifestyle. And so it's really not as complicated as people make it out to be. It's actually pretty simple, pretty easy. I try to make it as, as non-complex as possible when you're working with me to make sure people actually stick to it and that they actually, maintain those long-term results.
100%. As you mentioned, it's about progress, it's not about perfection. It's about those small wins every single day. Like, how can we optimize our lives and move forward, right? And also embrace it because, like, of course, you're gonna have like struggles and challenges and things like that, but that's part of the process, right? And just kind of keep on going and give yourself grace, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about doing what you can, moving forward, like making those small wins, and you see how you start to feel better. It starts to create that forward momentum. Is hey, this is actually something I'm going to keep on doing, and actually see the goal because I keep on moving forward.
Yeah, and if you look at like neuroscience and, research around how the brain functions, if you get little tiny wins every single day, it just creates those little dopamine hits that now you start craving those things that used to seem difficult to do, like going to bed early and eating healthy and walking every day. And it's just so crazy because yeah, you're right. It's just those small daily wins that really just make those lasting changes.
Yeah, because those negative habits, they start to fall off in a sense because you start to add all this positivity. It's like, hey, this is actually a much better way of being, right? It's like we're so caught in our paradigms and the way we've been doing things. It's like it's the only way we see it. But if we actually take those actions, hey, there's another way. You just got to keep on going and actually start to be a model for what's possible.
Yeah, that's so good.
Like, if someone is like going along this path and they come up against some obstacles, are there any strategies you have people kind of employ in a sense to move forward or maybe strategize, like self-assessment? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. Like most people, get through the whole, program I put them on pretty easily. But yeah, every once in a while, like people don't handle it as well as they, I expect them to. And I always just tell them like, hey, just text me, let me know. There's always a way to get you back on track. But yeah, I mean, it's not always an easy process for people. There's some people who have, they're in their 60s by the time they reach out to me or their 50s, and they're just so ingrained in all these bad habits that it's really hard to just even get them out of those. And so it's really just, I think having someone there who can really just encourage you and just be there every step of the way is also such an important part of the healing process versus trying to do it on your own. And then if something goes wrong, you just kind of spiral and go down, this bad thought process versus having someone there who can be like, hey, I've seen this before. We've got like 5 or 6 things we can try to get you back on track. And then we do. And they're like, oh, okay. So that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So yeah, there's always going to be hiccups in the road, with healthcare. The human body is so complex that it almost never goes the way that you would expect it to, because there's just so many things going on in the body that we don't know about. Like the more I learn about the human body, the more I realize there's so much I don't know. And so it's just so interesting when, you get people who are like, oh yeah, if I take a multivitamin, I can't, I get all these crazy symptoms and I just can't even take like supplements. And then they go on, herbs and binders and the stuff I put them on, and they're fine the entire detox. And those would be the people that you'd expect would have like issues with it, and they don't. And then, other people who are maybe a little more healthy, all of a sudden they freak out because they're like, wait, I'm getting a headache and I don't normally get headaches. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let's just tweak the dosage a little bit. And then they're fine again. And they're like, oh, okay, it wasn't the end of the world. And so it's just, having someone there who can kind of just like, I guess just, make things a little more simple for them and just take away the guesswork really kind of helps in that process. But yeah, I mean, it's never going to be smooth sailing 100% of the time, but most people handle it pretty well.
100%. When it comes to healing, is there a certain syntax or sequence we should be looking at? Like, is there a certain order of doing things that actually make things work better? Or like, if we don't do it, is it healing even possible? Like, how do we start to approach that in a sense?
Yeah, so I always tell people, you've got 3 organs in your body that remove toxins. And so number 1 is your gut. Number 2 is your gallbladder, and number 3 is your liver. So those are the main organs that are going to basically pull waste out of your system and get them out of your body. And so if those organs are functioning well, all that waste from your cells, your tissues, your other organs gets dumped into your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system, dumps it into the bloodstream. And the liver is the first pit stop for all of those toxins to go through. So it's basically filtering out your blood every second of every day, which is why if you have liver failure, you can die within 24 hours because there's so many toxins that accumulate in your body. And it's not just things we're exposed to, it's also waste products that our cells produce on a daily basis. Those have to go out of your body. And if they're not efficiently getting out of your body, if your body's only removing them at 50% capacity for 10, 20 years, you can imagine that's going to take a toll on the body. You're going to have, chronic inflammation, weight gain. A lot of excess toxins are stored in fat cells. So I've seen a lot of people who struggled with weight loss, and then they started detoxing, and all of a sudden they shed all that weight because we opened up drainage first. So when I talk about drainage, I'm talking about healing things like leaky gut, getting rid of those infections in the gut lining, healing the liver and the gallbladder and supporting those organs, with really healing herbs and maybe removing, parasites or other infections that are causing those issues, because they can definitely mess up those organs. Like mold toxicity, heavy metals, parasites, those can all really affect drainage. And so for me, before I even went after the parasites, I had to really heal up the leaky gut that was going on. I had to support my gallbladder. And then I was able to go after systemic parasites. But it was a really long process for me because I had such horrible, I dealt with constipation for over a decade. And so we had to get my bowel movements normal again and get my gallbladder functioning. And your gallbladder and your liver really help with digestion. So people who have digestion issues, they eat food and they immediately feel bloated. I'm immediately thinking, okay, you probably got some liver and gallbladder stuff we got to focus on. Or maybe you have low stomach acid and that's what's causing those issues. So it's kind of like thinking about the way that waste gets out of your body. It's kind of like a toilet that's clogged. If you have gut issues or liver and gallbladder dysfunction and you're not removing waste efficiently, like if you walk into a bathroom and you see a clogged toilet, are you going to be like, you know what, I'm going to use it anyways, I think it'll still flush? No, you're going to go to the next stall. And so, but a lot of people do this where they just see a parasite cleanse, they're struggling, they have bloating or, really bad gut issues. And they're like, well, I mean, it'll probably help. And they're basically just, throwing a grenade into a plugged up system and then wondering why they feel worse after. And so really, really important to figure out, okay, if you have gut issues and liver issues and gallbladder issues, well, first of all, what's causing it? What kind of factors are creating those organs from not functioning well? Let's fix those first. And then if you had any heavy metals or mold toxicity pop up on testing, now we can go systemically after those toxins safely because we've opened up a way for those toxins to get out of the body. Because if you just start pulling a bunch of toxins from fat cells and tissues and wherever else your body stored them because you weren't eliminating, waste efficiently, and there's nowhere for them to go, you're going to get, really bad detox reaction. And, that's what I talked about earlier with people who are like, yeah, I have migraines now. I never used to have headaches, or I ended up in the ER, or now my stomach pain is worse. And probably 10% of the people I work with now are the ones who did that, and I have to fix them. So that's why it's so important to get a full picture of how your body's doing. You can't rely on yearly blood work. That doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what's going on in your body. It's like the bare basics for some organ function and, do you have a crazy infection in the body, but it's not going to show parasites or mold or heavy metals or any other chemical toxicity in your body.
Yeah, so important. So when it comes to health in general, there's so much misconceptions, conflictions? Like, what do you see in general, and how can we start to kind of filter our own process, right? Like, hey, we see all this information, but how do we actually see what is right for us, and actually not be concerned by all the nonsense and anything we see that is potentially right for someone, but not us as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I know we've touched on a little bit of it. It's really hard because we're in an age of information that's so overwhelming for people that they don't even know what's real and what's not anymore. And so it's even hard to go on social media and even like find a doctor you trust who's, maybe you just feel like they're just trying to sell you a product or a protocol or, something like that. And I think the first question you should ask yourself is if you're going to work with a practitioner, do they have the same protocol for everyone or do they individualize it? That would be my number one thing is make sure that the care you're getting is based on you. And it's not just, hey, here's my 7-step protocol to fix all bloating. That doesn't work. Like everyone's so different. If you're just going on a generic protocol, you're going to get generic results. That's what I always tell people, like you can't expect really solid results in your health if you're just doing generic things. And so that would be number one. But yeah, I mean, it's just tough. Like, I think it just takes time and intuition and discernment to figure out like who to actually trust and who to learn from. And I think the number one place to start is just learning about food quality and what products, like self-care products like deodorant, toothpaste, chapstick, which of those things can you start swapping out for less toxic brands? Look up like, hey, top 10 non-toxic chapstick brands or top 10 non-toxic deodorant brands, and just start, making small changes and just start to remove some of those things that are causing the inflammation and the organ dysfunction in your body, and just start slow. And it's really, I know it's frustrating because there is so much information out there, but I'd say the biggest thing to look out for is if someone says this one thing is going to fix everyone's one problem, just immediately move on. That's not realistic. That's not really going to be a really good product for you to start on. So anyone who's ever advertising like one protocol for one result, I would just move on. That's probably the number one red flag for me. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great doctors out there who teach really good stuff. Even people who aren't doctors who, just learned all this stuff on their own. Like you don't have to be a doctor to know how to take care of your health. Like we have such a huge access to information nowadays that anyone can learn this stuff. It just might take a little bit longer. And so that's why, really important to, find someone who can really help expedite the process for you.
100%. Because it's not just what you do, it's how you do it, right? We can think about all these amazing things and, protocols and supplements, but that's how we do it. It's like the quality matters. Not just getting some random thing, but actually the one that is going to get the results, right? So just being able to go through all that information, like I like to say, you have to filter everything through your own guidance, your own path, your own journey, right? You have to be able to be discerning and understand that there are foundational principles, of course, that work for everyone. Right? Eat real food, right? Eat organic, move, all these things. Stress management, get out in nature, right? And then from there, it's basically kind of filtering things for your goals, your decisions, your values. And again, it's like all this information is great, but it doesn't mean it's right for you. It may not be right at all, but again, it may be right for someone. So just taking things into account and not like saying like, this is the way. What is your way? And find that path and learn as you go. It's always a process, right? And all you have is right now.
Yeah. And it's so funny, like just being on Instagram, because that's where my biggest like following is. And, people always fight in the comment section of, like I'm always calling out people who have tried diet and supplements and nothing worked. And then there's always someone in the comments who's like, well, I did diet and I feel 100% better. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just talking to the people who it didn't work for. Those are the ones that I'm trying to help out, so. Right. So yeah, you're right. It's like there's always a protocol for everyone, and there's always something that will work for a bunch of people and not work for you, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just meant it wasn't the right thing for you. And so, yeah, like you're right. Like some people can just go on, a really like a whole foods based diet and just clean out all processed junk in their food, and all their health issues go away. And they're like, oh my God, this fixed all my health issues. So then they start teaching people all that, and it still works. It's great. It's amazing. But, there's also some people who have a lot deeper issues going on like I did, where where I cleaned up my food. I was eating ridiculously healthy food for almost a decade and I still felt terrible every time I went off of it. So it's for some people, they just need a lot deeper work. You know, they need to get rid of parasites or mold or heavy metals and really just kind of understanding, you know, what are those red flags that you see in a health history or when you're doing, you know, an initial consult with someone that really make you think, okay, I think this person might have mold toxicity or parasites or something going on. And let me order some tests to figure out what's really underneath the surface. So yeah, there's different things for everyone and you are a unique individual. So don't expect that what worked for Susie's uncle's cousin is going to be the magic cure for you. So
Yeah. Anytime you hear like, this is the way, you gotta be careful with that.
yeah, run.
Yeah. Is there anything else in terms of functional medicine, gut healing that you want to touch on or anything that is important for people to know?
Yeah, I think we touched on most of it, but I would say like just some practical advice for people because I know we talked about it a lot. If you're someone who's like, okay, I hear you, Dr. Davis. I am incredibly stressed and I know I need to go outside and move, but like, what can I do in the midst of all this stress to actually feel better and not be in a fight or flight state all the time? So a really simple thing, besides grounding, which just means stick your feet in the dirt or the grass or the beach sand for like, 10 to 20 minutes. That's all grounding means. One of my number one things is breath work. So there's two really great books. I would highly recommend reading them, especially if you're someone who has a high stress job or, you have a lot of little kids running around at home and you're always stressed all the time, trying to take care of them. There's two books. One's called The Oxygen Advantage and the other one's called Breath. By James Nestor. I forgot who the author was for The Oxygen Advantage, but it should be pretty easy to find because I don't think anyone else has that same title. But those two books are incredible and it shows you how breathing improperly affects your entire body. But there's also these really simple breathing exercises you can do to get yourself out of that fight or flight state and down into that rest and digest state, which for those of you with gut issues is incredibly important because we got to be able to digest our food and, have good gut function. And stress is one of the major contributors to leaky gut. It's actually been shown in research to create leaky gut. So if you want to avoid, shutting down that number one drainage pathway, your gut, and if you want to avoid, not being able to absorb nutrients and, produce nutrients properly, you've got to keep your stress levels low. So number one is what's called box breathing, but make it have an exhalation focus. So instead of breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and then holding for 4, you're going to actually breathe out twice as long as you breathe in. So you can breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 8, and hold for 4. So if you focus on exhaling a lot longer than inhaling, it actually has a lot of amazing physiological benefits for your brain and your blood flow and your ability to relax. And it kind of puts you in that parasympathetic rest and digest mode. So that would be the number one practical tool I would say is just set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even multiple times throughout the day if you're really, really high stress, and just do that. It's so simple, so easy, it's free, and I guarantee you're going to feel a lot better after doing it.
Yeah, that is great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dr. Davis, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing our information with us. And with your story is amazing, right? Because we have so much health challenges that people are overcoming, and we hear someone overcome these things, and it can be an inspiration for other people as well. So thank you for sharing that. And there's so much information we can do to actually learn about this. And a lot of it is to stop doing the things that don't work, right? Because our body knows how to heal. Most often we just have to get out of the way and let it do its thing. And essentially, we have a lot of information out there, but filtering it through our own guidance is the path, right? Being able to focus on what matters and focus on foundational principles. So it's really awesome and a very fun conversation. So I appreciate you. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So if people would like to connect with you and your work, where can we go?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again so much, Anthony. This is a great conversation. And I love when people actually ask good questions, so it feels more conversational than like an interview style. So yeah, you have some great questions. I love that. And you said it so well is, your body can heal itself. Like it's designed to heal itself. It's amazing once you learn all this stuff and you start realizing that all I have to do is just figure out what it needs help with, and then it'll just kind of do the rest of the work. And so that was so well said. But yeah, I would just say, if you're listening to this episode and you're dealing with gut issues and you're thinking to yourself, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be able to go to the bathroom every day or to not be bloated all the time or to be able to go out to eat. and actually, eat whatever you want and not be suffering later on. Or, maybe you've thought to yourself, I've already tried so many things. What if nothing works? What if I'm too far gone? I'm going to encourage you to do one of two things. So number one, go find me on Instagram. It's at Dr. Kate Davis. So DrKateDavis. I'm sure it'll also be in the show notes as well. And just start following me on there. I've got hundreds of posts on there on, teaching you guys this stuff, how to move the needle forward, how to know if you have maybe some mold toxicity or parasites or, all these things that we talked about in this episode, how to know if you have gallbladder dysfunction or liver dysfunction, really just start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So go follow me there, go look through all that content. I've even got a little highlight reel called Trash or Treasure. So if you want to learn more about food quality and if those health food brands that you're buying are actually healthy or if they're, completely garbage with the ingredients in them, start there. If you're someone who's like, I don't even know what to buy at the store, just go watch that highlight reel. I've got, at least 50 episodes on there about really common, health foods out there. But so yeah, that would be number one. Go follow me there. And you can start implementing that stuff right away. I even have some breath work stuff on there as well. And then for those of you who are maybe just like, hey, I really need to work with someone. I need a solution now because I'm really struggling. I'm offering an exclusive discount for, anyone who's listening to this episode. If you just go to my Instagram and DM me the number 100, I'll give you $100 off an initial consult plus labs package. So we can really see exactly what's going on in your body. You get a full picture of what's creating the chronic gut issues that you're dealing with, which drainage pathways aren't functioning well, what infections and toxins are in your body, and I'll put together an individualized detox and lifestyle care plan specifically suited to you so that you can finally heal and not end up in the ER in the process. And then one last thing that I want to leave with your audience, Anthony, is that, I've seen so many people completely heal from constipation, IBS, bloating, acid reflux, myself included. And so most of them, we're in the same boat as you guys. And I just want you to know that healing is absolutely possible. Don't lose hope. You're not stuck this way. I don't care what doctors have said to you. I've seen so many people have complete transformations when we get to the root cause of what's creating their gut issues and heal at a foundational level. So don't ever give up on finding an answer. It's definitely out there.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis.
Thank you.